All right. Hello, Matt. Episode 39, going live with Good Soil Investment Management. Uh, it's been a good week for Tesla investors. I mean, that's our highest conviction name. We'll talk a lot about Tesla in a few minutes and such. But I think we typically kick off the format as macro markets a little bit, and then we go into Tesla and Elon stuff and other stocks and whatever else, and go over a bunch of Q&A at the end. And this is being live streamed on YouTube and Twitter Space at the same time, recorded on both for anyone who wants to leave and come back and watch or listen later. How's it going, Matt?
Good, thanks. Strength in the macro market, to be sure. I mean, I've been a little bit surprised about just how strong, the markets have been in general on seemingly not much news. I mean, there's not been a whole lot of development on the Russia-Ukraine situation. It doesn't seem like there's any kind of major change on, like Fed policy or anything like that. So to see kind of the rally we've seen in the major indices, and then Tesla in particular, and I think Apple's back to positive for the year now. It surprised me a little bit how strong macro's been. What's your kind of takeaway after this huge rally we've seen the last couple of weeks?
Yes, I mean, the macro market climate is very hard to predict. When there's unexpected geopolitical events, almost usually results in uncertainty that was not taken into account previously, and that uncertainty is then discounted in the market, and then over time that uncertainty becomes more certain, or the market just kind of accepts it and acknowledge, or adapts to it, that particular. So there's certainly uncertainty with Russia, Ukraine still, what the outcome will be, but I feel like that same level of uncertainty has sort of been in the market for the last several weeks now, where the market maybe has adapted to that geopolitical event to some degree. There's commodities, there's all kinds of fallouts of commodities, or I heard about grain shortages and such, but Russia's like less than 2% of the global economy. It's China, 10% or more of the global economy at this point. That would, some kind of geopolitical event with China is a bigger deal for the macro markets, I'd say.
For sure.
More than just an initial shock, which I think the Russia-Ukraine was. In China, there's some lockdowns going on with COVID right now. They're sort of attempting like a zero COVID thing, which I think is probably not a good idea, but they're going to burn their own economy if they continue on that path, I think, with the Omicron, and such. But we'll see how things play out in China. Their government seems to adapt quickly on certain things, and they're not, encased in so much bureaucratic red tape like the U.S. is. They can make decisions.
Yeah, certainly the just kind of blanket authority that they have gives them a lot more flexibility to kind of move quickly, and that can definitely be a good thing at certain times. Yeah, I do kind of agree with you though that this kind of zero COVID mentality is probably not going to be successful in the long run. I just don't think we can kind of put that genie back in the bottle at this point, but. Yeah, it's interesting. You saw the lockdowns in Shanghai this week. There was similar stuff going on in Hong Kong not too long ago, and it's obviously impacting Tesla's plant now with a little bit of production impact there. So hopefully that doesn't drag on too much longer. I think it's going on right now, if I'm not mistaken, like through April 1st was my understanding. So
one silver lining, short-term in nature, and as long as it's somewhat short-term in nature, I think one silver lining is maybe it doesn't matter in the projection total for 2022 overall anyway, if they have to shut down for a week or two right now for this, because of the chip shortage they have, is still limiting them to some degree. But now they'll hopefully receive extra. Maybe the chips are being produced less and less because of the short shutdown, you could argue too. But if not, then maybe just because they're kind of supply constrained on the chips anyway, that they can just ramp up production a bit more than they otherwise would have when things come back online in Shanghai anyway. So that's one possible rose-colored view on it. I guess that's not a bad thing, but not a good thing either, obviously, almost.
Yeah, no, it's a very good point though. I mean, I think most people think, oh, shutdown, that means you're going to reduce production by, let's say, 5,000 units for this quarter, And that would also mean that the calendar year is going to be reduced by 5,000 units. But to your point,
Yeah.
if the supply chain continues to kind of kick out chips and your production has been constrained to your chip supply, which definitely seems to be the case based on all the comments we've heard from Tesla so far, then it could very well be the case that you take a little kind of short-term pain right now and get a benefit, in Q2, Q3, something like that. So hopefully that's the case, but I think either way, it's probably a pretty minor issue.
Yeah. One other rose-colored view I have on some Tesla news is Carpathy taking a 4-month sabbatical. I don't know. I put a tweet out like my interpretation is that this is just my guess of what's almost probable. Maybe not the most probable of all the scenarios that I see for this. It doesn't mean it's like over 50%, but maybe there's a few scenarios. He has a kid, or he just had a breakdown, or whatever. There's a lot of different scenarios you can think of, but maybe like a 30% scenario is like, hey, the full self-driving is clearly finished in Elon's mind. He sees things before everyone else, and that you could argue, and that he sees the clear finish line and knows how he can manage it from here, and he doesn't want to. He's been wanting to maybe give Carpathy a much needed sabbatical for a while because he knows how to manage his top, people from Jerome Guillen in the past and others, that they need breaks every once in a while, and he can't just run them into the ground or they'll be burned out permanently. So maybe once he saw, like a clear vision of like, all right, I can take this over from here. I know the key things. I know who to lean on for this or that to make sure we get to the finish line, in a good way from here. I'll give Carpathy, I'll tell him he has to take 4 months off now or something like that. So that's what I think is an interpretation that I think I didn't see a lot of people put out initially. So I threw it out there, but there was a lot of people that were like, I think a lot of people just get nervous and think it's like bad news that he's taking a sabbatical. And it could be, that's a scenario too, but I'm just saying there's also positive, like rose-colored ways to look at things too.
Yeah.
So
that certainly makes sense. I think as I'm digesting the news, it moved the probabilities in my own mind greater towards, some bad news potentially of Carpathy leaving. I mean, he's so well known and so well regarded within the industry. I mean, he can really do whatever he wants to. If he leaves Tesla, he's going to have he can lead up AI anywhere basically. He's just that well regarded and so much on kind of the cutting edge of AI research. One of the things he's done really well is just kind of take the cutting edge in research, like in academia and elsewhere, and just put that into production at Tesla. I certainly hope it's the case that they've got kind of the tools and the backbone in place where, you don't need someone with Andre's credentials necessarily to kind of iterate from here. But I think on the whole, I would take this as mildly negative news, which could be, increases the odds of that he does, leave Tesla at some point. He did put out that good tweet though, kind of talking about wanting to get back with Dojo. I forget exactly the way that he worded it. But to me, that made it seem an indication that it's most likely, take it at face value, that he really just does need or want a sabbatical, get some time off, and then kind of come back fresh, ready to go and kind of dig back into it. So that's kind of where I put my P50 of what's the my median expectation of things. That I'd say it's 4 months sabbatical. He comes back and keeps working. But I think tail risk is,
there's some tail risk in this announcement for sure. Yeah, there's more tail risk in this announcement for sure. Yeah. And, I thought it was good that he responded to Comma AI on that one, Comma AI, like, hey, our chances went up to be second place. I don't know. I'm sure it's George Hotz behind that Comma AI tweet. Me and Dave, we interviewed George Hotz a while back, and they run a tight ship there, I think, and on purpose, and I'm pretty sure George wrote that kind of like half teasing, maybe. I don't know what's inside George's head when he wrote that, but Andre wrote back like, you mean 0.0015% chance or so? I don't know, something kind of like playful back, but that's a good sign too, that he's actively engaging back with George Hott, who's teasing them about it or something, as opposed to
that was some pretty masterful shade he threw there. That was I thought that was really hilarious. Just to respond back like, sure, I'm not saying you can't, but odds of you actually succeeding here first
very slim.
are quite low. So I thought that was pretty funny.
Yeah, yeah. It's funny. I got into like a Twitter, not feud, but like late last night. I don't know how, but somehow I just started. Some people were. I put something out like I think it's like more like 1 in 100 or 1 in 10, somewhere in that range. That something could happen where comma AI might 1 in 100 is like I think very slim. I'm saying it's very slim, but I don't think it's 1 in 10,000. That's like almost non-existent in my mind. So I don't know. I put something out there and got into this crazy debate about I guess 1 in 100 versus 1 in 10,000. Kind of
I did
crazy.
see that. Yeah, I did kind of agree with the your naysayers point of view. That I think
Yeah.
if you were to have 100 parallel universes, I don't think comma AI would be first to
Well, I'm saying
pull
also think of
self-driving
it this way.
in one of
Think
those.
of it as 100 slightly similar parallel slightly,
Yeah.
almost similar because we don't really know what's going on behind the scenes any of these places. Like we listen to Elon and his team talk, we listen to George talk. We don't know what's inside their head. We don't there's The whole point is there's so many unknowns that we can't know all of it. We don't have all the information ever. And there's just even the people who think they have all the information, they're still unknowns and they have, people don't acknowledge that. So my whole point is like maybe with the unknowns and unknowns, it's even higher. I don't know, but it's possible that neither Tesla nor comma AI solves it this year, but comma AI pulls ahead somehow, and then next year gets ahead before Tesla does or something. So it's
Mhm.
there's lots of unknowns. That's my whole gist of I think 1 in 100 is, or even 10 in 100 is fair. That in my mind, as an order of magnitude, it's somewhere in between there of the unknowns being greater than what we think about it. Anyway, that's not
Yeah,
my
I do
point.
think people have a tendency to like what they think is going to happen. They think is like 90% probable a lot of times, and that's
Yeah.
like there people
And I think it's
underestimate
90% probable. I
overestimate
do think it's 90%.
variance
That's
as
what
well.
I'm saying. I think
Well,
it's
sure, but
90%.
if
I
you
just don't
think
think it's 99.999% probable, which is
yeah,
crazy to me for
exactly.
someone to say that.
Exactly. Yeah, but I think people have a hard time thinking of if something's highly likely. Does that mean it's
Yeah.
80% probable or 99%? Because there's a huge difference in those probabilities, and I think
Yeah.
most people don't think in that like level of granularity. I went through this really interesting exercise one time actually,
Mhm.
which I thought might be a good thing to do, like if we have an investor event sometime, Emmett. But
Yeah.
we were asked a bunch of questions at this kind of work conference I was at, and it was like, what do you think? Like, what's your 95% estimation? Where like you're pretty confident that you're correct on like the distance between like here and the sun. So like an estimate on the low end would be your 5% interval, and then on your high end would be your 95%. So like you give a very broad range so that you
Mm.
got your bases covered. And so like then there was like 20 questions, and based on the math, you should get one of those wrong. I think it was, or one or two of those wrong. But
Wow.
almost everybody that did this had like
Got a
seven
lot
or eight
wrong,
wrong.
I'm
So
sure.
like people like were constricting their range
Yeah.
much more tightly than they should have. So I thought that was
Yeah.
a very kind of interesting way of seeing how
How
bad
off
we are at
people
kind of
are.
estimating
Yeah.
our like 95% confidence interval.
Yeah. And that's how we can take advantage of the markets with our investing strategies, with options and such. And that's, I think we look for those cases. It's good to be a contrarian on that stuff. I think, when I see a ton of people disagreeing with me on something, it could mean that I'm wrong, but it could also mean there's an investment opportunity there where I could be wildly right. I mean, obviously, in this type of our discussion about 99 versus 99.9999% difference, it's hard to do that. And you can't do it with this particular thing anyway. But with regards to like, a nuclear war happening, you don't want to make money on the nuclear bombs going off, obviously. But with COVID restrictions, in 2020 or whatever, I was able to kind of, worked out. Or, Tesla, you and I in the past did it with Tesla options, and many others have done it too. But, if you find lemonade, for example, you think, oh, maybe there's a 30% chance they succeed, even if I discount my biases. Well, even though the market's giving it like a 2% chance they're going to succeed to be a 20 billion market cap in 2024 or whatever. You know what I mean? So I think looking for these things where we feel very contrarian against what everyone else is pricing something at is the essence of a lot of our investment philosophy. So it's kind of
Mhm.
interesting. Yeah. Anyway,
Yeah.
moving on to the Tesla, keep it on with the Tesla theme. Tesla stock split is coming. They wouldn't do this if there was no stock split coming soon. Um, I think What do you think, Matt? What do you think? Matt and I haven't even talked about this. We talked yesterday. We didn't really talk much about the split or details of this. So this is us talking the first time about this. What do you think the split should be, Matt? What would you guess? What would you want it to be?
Ratio? Yeah, I think 5 to 1 is not the right ratio. So I've heard a couple different comments. Like one person I heard said like having a bunch of 5 to 1 splits is kind of better than one, say, like 20 to 1 split every 5 years or something like that.
Hmm. Hmm.
And I think there's maybe a little bit of truth to that, but I do think people maybe tend to overemphasize the boost that the stock price gets in the early days. So like, when you announce the split, there's maybe a 10% run up, something like that you could attribute to the split. I do think that would tend to give itself back over the course of, a year or
Sure.
2 years.
Or it could be
So
5 years, whatever. It's going to give itself back
yeah,
eventually.
exactly. Where like, let's just say you hadn't had that split, and let's say Tesla gets to like a 2 trillion market cap at some point in the future. I think if you don't have that split, or you do have that split, I think 3 years from now Tesla's probably going to be pretty much in the same market cap situation, 2 or 3 years from now. So in my mind, it's like a short-term move that will kind of slowly erode the gains
Yeah.
that would happen in future periods. So I
Yeah.
tend not to put too much emphasis on it, to be honest with you.
Hmm.
But I don't know. I think I don't really care, to be honest with you.
Yeah.
Like 5 to
Yeah.
1, 10
Yeah.
to 1, 20. It doesn't really matter to me.
Yeah.
I think if it's
Long
a
term, it doesn't matter really. Yeah.
yeah, I'd kind of go with a 10 to 1. I think get it like 5 to 1 just still seems too small, because then you got $200 shares, and I still think that's going to be too high of a price for some of the smallest retail traders. So I think it would
Yeah.
benefit them to get it kind of closer to 100, or maybe even sub 100. But yeah, like I said, I don't think it's a kind of a huge issue one way or another. But what about you? Do you have a preference or a thought
Yeah.
of where it will
I
land?
got lots to say on this one.
All
Yeah.
right,
I got
let's
lots to say. I
I'll
mean,
buckle in here. I'll get a sip of my drink. I'll listen.
I think it should be 20 to 1 or bigger, 25 to 1. Heck, make it 50 to 1. Like I think from a first principles thinking, like how to simplify and boil it down, right? What is a stock price, right? A stock price should be, essentially, is the future value of all its dividends it will pay out, discounted back to present day value, right? And so ultimately, that's what Tesla's stock price will reflect one day, and in between now and then, there's going to be lots of zigzags in the charts with the stock going one way or the other, like you were just saying, right? The next first principles of why even do a stock split at all, then why do you even need one? Like, why not just go the Berkshire Hathaway? Well, Tesla is a big firm, over 100,000 employees globally, and it's growing fast. You want to have these employee stock plans working as efficiently as possible to incentivize all those employees. Then you have so many investors, not just in the US, but a lot of investors overseas, retail investors that can't get access to fractional shares or whatnot. And maybe their brokerages don't have it yet and they don't buy it, and there's some psychological barriers for retail investors, but that's on them, really. That's not what Elon's, I don't think, cares about, the psychological, barrier between a $10 stock to buy versus a $100 stock to buy or whatever. So I think you just try to split it one from a first principles like point of view. I'm thinking like simple, right? Split it once if possible, and not have to worry about it again, ever again, maybe, or for 10 years until Tesla becomes 10 trillion or 20 trillion market cap, maybe then. But if you think of it that way, then you would split it for like 50 to 1 or something right now, and it would be, if it would be a $20, what would it be, a $25 stock price or something? Or 100 to 1 would be, I mean, a 10 to 1 would be $100 stock price. So 50 to 1 would be a $20 stock price. And why not do that?
Mhm.
Because that's today's terms. We know Tesla's going to grow rapidly, and the business is going to grow rapidly, and the stock will eventually catch up to that, or maybe get ahead of it itself at times. But the stock price, we know, eventually is going to get to $50 or $100 again at some point anyway, from $20 if it gets split down to that. So
Not financial advice, but yeah. I
yeah,
agree with
well,
you.
we believe that. We're highly convicted,
Yeah.
and it might take 5, might take 10 years, it might take 3 years. I don't know, but it will happen. And so, if otherwise, if you don't split it 50 to 1 now or 25 to 1 now, then you might just have to split it again next year in 2 years. And it's a big distraction. Like, why do you need to have these stock splits going on? I mean, you already have so many people asking and curious about it. We're all curious about it because we love the short term price movement that it happens. But that's not what the first principles thinking is like, we're not in Tesla for anything short term. You're in it for long term, really. Sure, us as hedge fund managers, or we want our day traders want to know about it. But if you're really a loyal Tesla investor, the short term doesn't matter. It's really about the business and where it's going long term. I don't know. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I think so. But if you're going to do a 50 to 1, why not do a 69 to 1? It's that was Rob Maurer's
I would
thing
say
from
a
like a
couple
year
years
ago.
ago.
And
Yeah. I think that's just too complicated. It's just going to confuse people. They're going to be like,
the
what? I
math
get
would.
the math. Like, you can't do it in your head very easily unless you're Elon or some mathematician with a calculator in your head. But like, people in their head can say, oh, 10 to 1, that's $100 versus 1,000, or 20 to 1 people probably could do. But you go to like 50 to 1 or 60, or you go to 69 to 1, it's like, well, I've got a good calculator out. How many is that price going to be? Yeah.
I agree that it doesn't make any sense, but I could almost see Elon doing that just because it's like so annoying and, and like it's just like would be kind of like a dunking on and like joking on like just like the whole like how stupid it is. Like it doesn't really matter, right? So like
Yeah.
I could almost see
You
him
could
doing
go
it
the
for that
other
reason.
way. You could go the other way too and say, why not 1,000 to 1? And it's like $1.10 per share then. But I don't think that
I
would
think
make sense based on how
I
brokerages trade with commissions and stuff. That would just not be very
Yeah,
productive, I
and
don't
I think there's some issues there. Like I believe, and I don't know the rules, but I remember somewhere there's like I don't know if it's the New York Stock Exchange or someplace has a requirement. It might be the S&P
Yeah,
500,
there's some
but you need to be like
regulations
over
around prices
$10
over.
a share or $20 a share, something like
Yeah, there's
that.
some like NASDAQ
So
or regular
you can
exchange
imagine if they
regulations.
do like a 69 for one, just as like a joke, and the stock would be roughly $17. Then if the stock gets cut in half, which we've seen can happen, they could be sub $10, and that can cause some issues. Although I'd have to brush up my memory on exactly what
Yeah.
those are.
I'm not
So I don't
sure.
think it'd be
I
quite
think if
that high. I think 50 to 1 would probably be the highest I could see them
yeah.
realistically going.
Yeah, I think there might be some regulation. If the market cap is under a certain amount, then it's a problem. Because I think Ford was at like $4 a share at one point for a while, and that was not. It was still on the exchanges, but that's because its market cap was over like 5 billion or over 10 billion or whatever it was at the time. I don't know. So, but yeah, I think getting it to like $1 a share is silly. Yeah, I think you know keeping it in the $10 to $50 range would be, I think, the wisest thing in my mind. So you don't have to do it again in 3 years or whatever. So anyway, stock split. Lots of discussion about that right now. The stock's kind of rallying on this announcement, or we'll see what happens in the coming months if it gives it back, or if it continues to rally. Do you think it's going to rally further from the stock split news, Matt?
It's hard to say. I mean, it's up over 40% in like 2 weeks. So,
Yeah.
like we've got to
Call
keep. I
buyers
think,
are back.
well, actually, that's kind of interesting because I've seen some commentary. I forget who it was, but somebody posted something that. It was Yashu. I was watching one of his
Okay.
live streams, I think yesterday, and he said there actually was not a whole lot of call activity going on the back of this. So,
Well, Spot Gamma said something that there's a lot of calls going on in Tesla and Nvidia and like the index call buying. I don't know, but that's Spot
okay.
Gamma said something about that. That might have been last week though. I don't know.
Yeah, so I'm not sure. The question in my mind is like, what do the fundamentals look like? I think with this huge bounce that we've had, next week we're going to see production and deliveries, and we'll have earnings a couple weeks after that. So, I think if those are really strong or surprise to the upside, I could see the rally definitely continuing. Especially with Austin launching really soon here too. But if those disappoint at all, I could see a real sharp correction, not correction, but just draw down. We're still really volatile. I mean, like in pre-market this morning, it was at 11.25 or something like that, and it just dropped like $50 during the day, and now we're back up to what are we, like 1100 or something like that now. So we're in this very volatile situation where it definitely shot down too low, but it's also shot up really high. So it wouldn't surprise me if it draws back down again, or just if the volatility continues in any way. But I think it's going to be hard for this type of momentum to continue for any long period of time.
Yeah, no, I think so.
If we
It's going to have
consolidate
to take
around
a
here for
breather.
like 2-3 months, I'd be pretty happy, honestly.
Yeah, if we get some stability above $1,000 a share, that'd be nice. Yeah, we could hit. I mean, but at this rate, we could hit new all-time highs later this week.
It's true, which is so ridiculous. Like thinking of where
Yeah,
we were just 2-3 weeks ago, it's like
yeah,
I could not have imagined to be back over 1,000, and we just blew right by that. So
we
it's
did.
it definitely could
Yeah.
continue.
Yeah, it's surprising. I guess Tesla's really consolidating today because you have things like Rivian and Lucid each up like 8% or something, or more. In Rivian's case, 12.4% right now, and Lucid up 6%. So, yeah, the other electric vehicle makers that don't make cars, they just make prototypes. Those guys are up 10%, but Tesla's kind of consolidating. The only electric vehicle of mass production mass producing electric vehicles is just kind of consolidating after yesterday's 8% run. So interesting. Anyway, what's next on our agenda here, Matt? The Business Insider interview that Elon did. I hope everyone had a chance to read that. It's kind of long. It's a written format. Did you read it, right, Matt? What did you think about it?
Yeah, I did. It was pretty interesting. It's funny because Business Insider has like I think Lynette Lopez writes for them. She's the one
Yeah,
who is like the saying that the Shanghai plant would never be built and it's just like a dirty field or whatever she said. They've
yeah,
had historically like terrible coverage of of Tesla and Elon. So I thought Axel Springer I think is the parent organization, and so I thought the
yeah.
CEO did a really good job kind of interviewing Elon. Um, I don't think there was a whole lot of new information. I read it like 2 days ago, so
Yeah,
I'm
yeah.
probably should have
I
brushed
read
up
it.
on it a little bit. But what was your?
Yeah.
Did you have any major takeaways?
The big takeaway is the bot. It's just
Oh
reaffirms
yeah.
how serious they are and how they're progressing. And they might, he hopes to show a nice prototype, a working, prototype that works well. I forget the adjective he used or whatnot, but it seems like it could be an impressive prototype unveiling of the bot later this year.
Hmm.
And then for moderate production late next year. And that's pretty incredible. I mean, Elon's timeline is usually late, but lately it has not, except for full self-driving, it seems to be often late. But lately he mixes it up, and sometimes they're on time with something, or and I'm like, wow, Elon's on time with the Model Y deliveries, but a lot of things he's late on. So you kind of have to think he's going to be late on these timelines. But if not,
Yeah,
that'd be
that's.
really great to get the bot prototype unveiling this year.
I'm
I
definitely
think
discounting that by like probably 2 years for each one of those things.
moderate
Because like,
production 2 years and the prototype by 6 months, I'd say. Yeah.
yeah, I don't know. Six months is too aggressive in my mind. I mean, it's a pretty big engineering challenge, I think.
Well, 6 months delay. So
Six
prototype
months
like
delay. Okay.
yeah. So maybe like a year from now, or a little over a year from now, they have the bot prototype
I
unveiling.
think that would be a huge win, but like, where's the Roadster that was like 5 years ago or whatever, and
Yeah.
um, Cybertruck obviously delayed. Now
Yeah.
I think they'll do all these things, but they've got a lot on their plate still, and they still have a lot of deliverables that they need to work on that are kind of using up engineering resources. So
Mhm.
yeah, that would be great, but in my mind, that'd be just like a huge surprise win if they actually have a prototype later this year. I don't really expect it
Yeah.
at all.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm still not expecting it. I'm hoping for it. What's the say? Like I often hope for the best, but expect the worst, or expect something much less, something pessimistic. But hope, while at the same time I juggle the hope that it would be really exciting if they unveil it this year. I mean, that would be amazing. And how would they do the moderate production? Would it be, when he says moderate production, I'm thinking that might mean they're going to start producing the first few hundred for their own internal use
Yeah.
only, I'm thinking. And then bigger production would be like they're producing thousands a week, and that's for production, for use case in other industries and other people, or for outside reasons, I guess.
Yeah, that's kind of my thought as well. I mean, yeah, I think they'll probably have some sort of like pilot facility where they do this at first, but it'd be really more like R&D on the production process. So you think of what they did at Cato Road to kind of get the 4680 production process up and running. Like there's the whole R&D side on the product itself, but then much more important than that not many people think about is like the R&D on the production facilities itself. So all
Yeah.
the issues they had kind of scaling up that 4680. I mean, they talked about the one with that was that the powder coating that was like sticking to the drum or whatever that issue was, and it took them a long time to kind of sort through that. As you ramp up production, you get these unexpected issues. So it would be
Yeah.
not surprise me at all if they've got some kind of Cato Road type facility for the Tesla bot, next year, but it's, very limited production, and probably 100% of that's kind of dedicated to internal uses. And they sort out both the production of the bot and kind of some of the user interface and the bot software actually working, in the kind of internal Tesla uses, probably at production facilities. So
Yeah.
I don't know. I'm kind of curious.
I see boiled down AH in the there's lots of comments. We have a different screen now I'm not reading them as much, but he says boiled down AH says moderate production probably just means mass produced, not hand built prototypes. That makes sense. That, that could be why he said that. Like, instead of just right now, they're hand building some prototypes internally, right? So maybe they'll have machines to build the bots working. That's what he means by moderate production, even though those machines will need a lot of fine tuning to get things running smoothly. But
it's kind of funny. His old line was the machine that builds the machine, and now it's going to be like the bot that builds the bot that builds the machine.
Yeah, it's going to be a machine that builds the machine that builds a machine. Yeah, that's crazy. How many levels will it go, right? Yeah. So one comment was also, I see from Evan Glansman, has Goodstill come up with any earnings estimates for Tesla with the quarter coming to an end? Any thoughts on Tesla Energy coming in with surprise to the upside? Well, the first question, next week we plan to showcase Matt's infamous model and go through some use cases of what earnings could be after the delivery number has been revealed. And yeah, there's not. Why is there not so much speculation on delivery numbers this quarter? I feel like every quarter in the past, everyone's like, I think it's gonna be 310. No, I think it's gonna be 350. I think it's gonna be 280. This quarter, there's too much other news, but it's so strange. There's no speculation.
You're right. It's like it's almost like an afterthought. People are like, well, like, what is it, 315 or something like that? Is that what Troy Tesla
now
is?
312. I think it's down to 312 or something. Yeah.
So, which is pretty modest, to be honest with you.
I guess it's just the same as last quarter. There's no, people are just assuming it's gonna be the same as last quarter. I don't know.
Yeah, it seems like we could be in for a bit of a surprise. And this is kind of what we were saying in Q4 ahead of production and delivery. The expectations just seemed, somewhat muted. I think we were thinking it could be possible that they did over 290. Then they delivered like 307. We're just like, what? How is that even possible?
Yeah.
So clearly there's going to be a little bit of an impact, at least to production, with the Shanghai shutdown right now. But that shouldn't necessarily impact deliveries in a huge way. So I think I've been kind of expecting an inventory buildup this quarter, just because they had so little inventory on hand. But if you look at like that website ev-cpo.com, which lists all the used and new Teslas, last I checked, there was like 150 new vehicles anywhere in the world that were available for sale. So obviously more than that are in transit that just aren't listed. But the demand is just so off the charts high that, I have a feeling that they're going to be able to deliver, the vast majority of everything that they produced this quarter, even though inventory was so low to begin. So I don't know. I mean, if they have improved production a little bit, then it wouldn't surprise me if there's maybe $10,000 to $20,000, 10 to 20,000 units more than, maybe is the consensus right now. But it's surprising because I haven't seen a whole lot of this.
I haven't. Absolute high. My range would be like 285 to 335. I would anywhere in between that. It could be as low as 285, and it would be disappointing, but I don't think it would go lower. I'm like, I would say 90 to 95% confident it's within that range of 285 to 335,000. And anything above that or below that, I'm like, wow, I was, I guess my 1 in 10 chance of being wrong, or I'm just estimating my probability is way off, like your exercise earlier you talked about, so, but my current probability thinking is 285 to 335. I'm 85% sure it's in that range, maybe 90% sure. What's your 90% threshold range if you had to do that exercise for this?
I'd probably widen it a little bit.
For 90%, I'm saying not 90, not 95, not 99, but 90%.
90%. So are we talking production or deliveries? Because there's a big, not necessarily a big difference, but they could be different. I mean, I think production is maybe easier to estimate than deliveries.
Yeah, say production. That's what I'm thinking. Production. Yeah.
So for production, I don't know. I'd say like 275 on the low end, because I can't really imagine there'd be a major slowdown in production, but it could be possible if there's just
That we
more
didn't hear
supply
about.
issues than I'm thinking about that have not made their way
In
into the news
China or
cycle.
something, yeah.
Yeah, so maybe even 270 just on the to
Or
be a little bit
90%.
more
I would
conservative.
think that'd be like your 95%, but 90% you say
Well,
270
just
to what?
it's been quiet. So 270, but I think there's a lot of room to surprise on the upside. I mean, I could see like 330 even potentially if they've sorted out a lot of this stuff. So I've got a wider range. Yeah,
I'm just
like
saying 335 because they beat us so bad last quarter and we didn't even realize it. And much of that's in China. We don't really know what's going on in China. I mean, you got a
yeah,
few
that's true.
analysts,
All
but
right,
we don't really know what's going
maybe
on over
maybe I'll
there.
raise it to 340 then for that
Yeah,
because you're
that's
right.
what I think you should do.
Like it would. It's possible. Like clearly the Model X is they're producing more of those, and that's not a huge mover, but
That's not a lot, but yeah, the Model 3
like
Y and
Fremont in general, like they were talking about adding 50% capacity. So I just feel like we don't have good information on how quickly
no,
that's ramped up, and obviously we don't have the March numbers
yeah.
yet for Shanghai,
Maybe
but those could
in the
first couple of
comment
weeks could have been really
section,
strong.
let's see what people in the comment section put down as their kind of 90 percentile range estimate. I'm curious. So if people want to put that in, I'll rattle it off in a little while, I guess. But we'll see. Maybe the person who gets it right will we'll have them on to give them a prize if someone's closest. I don't know. I know Yashu does those like prizes, or so we'll just give him.
Yeah, I won his
kudos.
closing guessing game one time, and you get like virtual juju, which is a really nice prize.
Is it an NFT at least? Is it an NFT?
No, it's like a pat on the back.
Oh, okay. Oh, you click something on there. Yeah, you can do stuff with the YouTube channel. All right, let's get in. We've been talking a lot about this stuff. Elon's got
Fars
COVID
on
again. I
to
know we
300 to
talked about that.
350 first, though. He's our
Oh,
first one that put it in there.
that's 10%, 90% confident, 300 to 350. Okay, that's pretty impressive. Farzad's a former employee. You think he maybe has some connect, not probably not, but he understands the workings of Tesla very well from working there. So that's pretty good to know. That's pretty bullish. Yeah, Evan said 280,000 to 345,000. Henrik 290 to 330. Someone else said 315. So yeah, there's a lot of estimates, a few estimates coming in. Seem reasonable. Farzad's definitely the most bullish. Interesting. I hope you're right, Farzad. All right. Well, we'll see. Let's go on to the Q&A portion, I guess. We've talked a lot. We had a great Bitcoin interview this weekend. If you want to review it, we can talk more about that sometime. Some young entrepreneurs starting up a Bitcoin business. I talked a lot about it. Yeah, let's do some Q&A. I think, Alex, do you have any questions? I'm not sure I see anything displayed on the screen, but okay, I see it here now. From Rahaja Shekhar on Twitter, do you think Rocket Lab could itself be an acquisition target for bigger players, especially at current low valuation? I initially am going to say no. I think Peter Beck has his own vision and wants to move forward. I don't think he's tired. I think this is his dream. I don't think he wants to lose control. I think it's founder led. A lot of these SPAC space startups, yeah, they would be acquisitions because, maybe they're groups of people or, but I think just studying Peter Beck, I don't think so. But what do you think, Matt?
Yeah, I agree. The other thing to keep in mind is like there's not a lot of big players in this space. Like SpaceX is the elephant in the room with a $100 billion valuation, probably a little bit higher than that right now. But like if you look at the majority of the other publicly listed space companies, like I can't think of one that's over $10 billion, to be honest with you. Maybe there is, but doesn't come to mind. And then there's like ULA could potentially be the other player. But that's like like Boeing and Lockheed, and I just don't think like those cultures would not mesh whatsoever. So to me it's like, who would buy Rocket Lab? To me it doesn't make sense. There's not a large player that could acquire them that would make sense in my mind. Maybe there could be like a private equity consortium that would do like a take private sort of deal. I could maybe see that, but Peter Beck has spoken a lot about an advantage of being public is that it kind of gives them this currency that they can use for bolt-on acquisitions. So they really see themselves as the acquirer of these kind of small mom and pop space industry players. He's kind of talked about the whole industry being like a little bit too like disintegrated. So he's trying to acquire a lot of these small players and build a lot of that functionality in-house. And so I think that's probably more likely to play out, get them a little bit more fully vertically integrated as opposed to somebody else coming in and buying them.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Next question from Mark Gomez Tejada on YouTube comments. When and for what amount do you expect Tesla to start repurchasing shares as Apple does now, I guess? Yeah, great question. I think at some point after they go wide release full self-driving, they just generate so much cash they don't know what to do with. They just can't expand efficiently. I think that's where it's possible they repurchase some shares or maybe do a dividend even of some sort. So yeah, they're going to have more cash than they know what to do with at some point. Could be, a year from now, could be 5 years from now, could be 7 years from now. I'm not sure when that time exactly is, but they will do something, and repurchasing shares, could make sense. What do you think, Matt?
Yeah, I agree with you. I mean, I think Elon made that comment a couple of years ago about, operating at a roughly cash flow neutral standpoint, free cash flow neutral standpoint until they solve autonomy. And then he expects them to be extremely cash flow positive. And I do think that's probably true. And I would say there's that interim step of, let's say, full self-driving take rate increases, but it's not quite like autonomous, robo taxis yet. I think at that point, when their operating cash flow, like right now, their operating cash flow is like marginally higher than their like CapEx requirements. So they're getting more from cash flow from their current business than they need to plow back into the business, like to build new plants. But it's not by such a huge margin that they could have like a meaningful amount of share repurchases. Like maybe they could do up to $5 billion a year, but that'd be cutting cash flow a little bit tight probably. But in the future, if they're generating a free cash flow of, say, like $20 billion a year, then yeah, rather than having that pile up on the balance sheet, I think it would make more sense to do a repurchase. So I like the very earliest I could see that happening is like next year if autonomy goes like about as well as you could expect. But I think a more realistic time frames maybe like 2024, 2025, something like that.
Yeah. All right. Next question from Brian Gamble on YouTube comments. Matt, Elon has advocated for restarting deactivated nuclear power plants in Germany and elsewhere. Costs aside, how long to produce electricity again if they started today? What do you think, Matt?
So that's tricky. The German electricity market is super complicated. I've spent a little bit of time. It's kind of bizarre, actually. I know in the United States, for example, it's not necessarily a matter of like, can you physically start the plants back up? Because yes, of course you can. Like, it might take a little bit of time to get the uranium and like get your workforce assembled. But like, I think if there were no regulatory hurdles whatsoever, I can't imagine that would take more than like a month or two to kind of line all that stuff up. It would be hard, like no doubt about that. But I don't think that the physical challenge of kind of getting the plant up and running is the issue. It really is more about like the regulations. And there are so many regulations in the power industry that it's like so hard to coordinate among them. Like you've got like not only federal regulations, but there's state regulations. There's kind of local siting laws. There's the grid operator that you need to work with. There's the transmission. So once you've generated the power, you've got to carry that power away. And there's a different entity that actually covers the transmission and distribution lines. And then there's a different regulator which oversees the transmission. So like getting all of the regulations squared away, like to even start the process of like, how would you do that? My sense is that would take a very long time. So, I mean, if it was like some national concerted effort where they just said, let's try to figure out how to sort through these regulations to restart the plants, maybe they could do it in like a year or two, but my sense is it would take a lot longer than that, just with how things are right now in Germany.
Yeah. From Gel Juffermans on the YouTube comments, what are your thoughts on Leap pricing at the moment? Current distribution seems very heavy in the tails. I don't think we've looked at the Leap pricing since this recent run up. We looked at it, a week or a couple weeks ago, actually, but not in the last week or so since Tesla really ran up through 1,000 here. But a few weeks ago we liked the pricing for sure, and we added a few leaps. Um, and also in our personal, or I think I mentioned on Twitter, I put in my personal account, I added some leaps not long ago. I haven't looked at it right now. Maybe next week I'll look at it between now and then. I just assume they're much more expensive um, because the prices just run up so much recently. But the leaps pricing, you have to be careful sometimes, especially like the 2 year out leaps, because the bid and offer can be so wide, um, that sometimes it's hard to get like it could be like $10 or $20 widespread for like a deep out of the money call option that's trading at like 50 by $70 or something, but the last price might be 70, so it shows last price of 70, but really you could buy it for like $55 if you put your limit order there, or vice versa. So you just have to be careful with the widespreads on some of those leaps. From Martin Muldoon, any major catalysts coming up for Rocket Lab? Great question, Martin. I do think they have some launches coming up in the next few days, if I recall. There's a launch window opening up in a few days. They got some more I think they're going to have a lot of launches this year relative to last year. For the second half of the year, especially COVID restrictions in New Zealand have sort of let up, I've heard. So that's helped their business, I would think, continue moving forward. Matt, you think of any upcoming catalysts for Rocket Lab?
Not like we think there could be for Tesla. To be honest with you, I think this whole kind of crash that we've seen through the first quarter kind of made us re-examine all the names in our portfolio a little bit. And gosh, I still love the discount that we're getting on Rocket Lab and Lemonade, and some of the other names in our portfolio. But in my mind, they're more risky. So it makes it, at least, especially in the short term. I think in the longer term, like Rocket Lab in particular seems not super risky, given their technology advantage over most of the other players except for SpaceX. But will there be a catalyst that doubles or triples the stock in the next 2 years, or could it be that they pop in 5 years? I'm not sure there. So I think kind of holding the equity makes more sense for Rocket Lab and some of these other names. Whereas I think Tesla, some of the leaps potentially could make a little bit more sense. So that's kind of how I think about it. The growth names that are younger in their kind of maturity stage, it's less clear, especially in this macro environment, how they'll kind of fare in, say, the next 2 years.
Yeah, when you have such a small market cap company like Lemonade at 2 billion or sub 2 million market cap still, Lemonade, Rocket Lab is 3.8 billion market cap right now, something around there. So these are relatively small market caps compared to the total addressable market that they're involved with or they're growing into. So for Rocket Lab, it's grown into a massive total addressable market space industry that's growing exponentially into so many different things. And then you have Lemonade, which is part of a gigantic. It has the capability to be a bigger part of a gigantic insurance industry. And so the reason there's such small market caps relative to those sizes is because maybe there is no clear catalyst that anyone can see, coming up very soon. So it doesn't mean the stock is not going to the stock doesn't necessarily need like an imminent catalyst. There could be a surprise that comes up later. It could just be the business or people, I think, mass psychology, market participants realize, hey, this isn't a bad deal for second place in space, or this isn't a bad deal for an insurance company that, looks like it has the possibility to really disrupt the insurance industry. And so as people kind of come to that realization, market participants come to that realization and, start buying some of those shares, the stock can really appreciate much quicker sometimes than if there was an actual catalyst. So it's hard to say, but we like those names a lot. From Palantir Vision on YouTube, didn't Elon say that they were not rushing end of Q4 deliveries since it was already a big beat? Could some of those carry over and benefit Q1 surprise? Yeah, that's a good point. He did say that, I think, at Q4, like not to go too hard at the end of the Q4. He did mention that. I'm not sure
Yeah.
how big
So
of a
he
deal.
did, but if you look at what happened, they actually delivered a lot more vehicles than they produced. So
Yeah,
it
there's very
seems
little
like,
cars in inventory at the end of the quarter, right? Yeah.
yeah, it seemed to me that they probably like maybe Elon saw like, oh shoot, we're spending a lot on like expedite costs for these. We probably shouldn't be doing that. But my sense from kind of the timing of when that email came out and then everything that we saw after, after that actual production and delivery report came out, was that like it was too late for them to actually kind of like unwind the actions that had been taken to date. So my expectation for this quarter would be that probably the cost, like the expedite cost, should be lower, which should show up in improved gross margin. But maybe that results in an inventory buildup. So
Yeah.
that's kind of what I would think, that which should potentially temper your delivery expectations a little.
Yeah. I would say that's true. All right, from No Name on YouTube. Given Bitcoin's energy consumption, why do you think Tesla holds it on their balance sheet given Tesla's green vision? Do you think it's a genius marketing move by Elon? How do you feel about it? Yeah, this is, I think, something Elon has voiced concern with, about a year ago now. He said he was concerned with energy consumption after some Cambridge study on it. And I've seen reports of like Exxon Mobil and stuff like dedicating natural gas to mining Bitcoin. I don't know if that, how true that is now, but it's just, yeah, there is a concern with energy consumption. I mean, Texas, some are saying is, the grid is partly unstable now because of so much Bitcoin mining being relocated to Texas in the last year or two, especially. So, you know, I, there's a lot of points on that side of the argument that concerns me, and there's, the renewable energy argument too. That maybe long term it's good because it inspires more renewable energy sources to be. I don't know, Matt has you have probably a better take on this than me with your energy background.
Yeah, I mean, I think with this question in particular, why does Tesla hold it on their balance sheet? I think um, the concerns about energy usage, Elon didn't really seem to think those were serious until after they bought the 1.5 billion worth of Bitcoin. So I think it's important to keep that in mind. He seemed to kind of change his mind about energy consumption actually being an issue after Tesla actually bought them. So yeah, you could actually argue that him selling the Bitcoin would, result in a big transaction that would have to go through the blockchain, which would result in more energy consumption. So maybe just holding them is the best thing to do from an energy consumption standpoint. But I think, he's still broadly supportive of cryptocurrency. I mean, he's mentioned he holds Bitcoin, Doge, and Ethereum. I think those were the three in his own personal account. So like clearly he views some benefit for these cryptocurrency assets. But he doesn't want to like he suspended that Bitcoin payment process thing, which I think was a smart move if you do believe in these energy consumption issues. So I think that's how his thinking has evolved on it. But I do think this. I'm really excited to see Master Plan Part 3 because I do think that there could be like a solution which incorporates like crypto mining of some sort, or dispatchable compute power of some kind, making its way into Tesla products in the future. I think that makes a lot of sense for kind of balancing the grid.
Hmm. Well, I see Evan Glansman in the chat said they just came out with June 2024 options for Tesla. We'll have to check those out.
Oh
Those weren't
wow!
there like a week or two ago when we were checking. So we'll look at those pricings. Those typically when they come out with a new later expiration. In my experience with Tesla, maybe it's not the case now that it's more liquid than it used to be, 5 or 10 years ago. But when they come out with the later expiration month, it used to be like January 2020, whatever. They didn't have June and whatever leaps. But in my experience, that those leaps are a little more expensive and maybe even a little wide, definitely a wider spread and maybe a little more expensive initially. And you kind of wait a few weeks for other people to kind of start buying or selling them a few times before the spreads might tighten. And then you kind of can get a better deal versus trying to go all in on June 2024 leaps right now, like the day they come out. That's my experience, just to kind of see how it unfolds. Although you risk, Tesla stock going up further if that happens in the meantime, or it could go down and get you a better price that way too. I see Yashu's also here now in our comments. Hey, Yashu, hope you're doing well. And I think we're about out of time, 10:20. One last thing I wanted to mention, Matt, which we didn't touch on, is Elon's Twitter kind of concerns.
Yeah, that
Free
poll over the
speech.
weekend, right? Yeah.
Yeah, he's a free speech absolutist, he says. I saw he liked a meme of that, and he's mentioned that before. I'm undecided on being a free. I mean, I think free speech overall is important. I think it's necessary, and this might be controversial. And I might be a free speech absolutist like Elon, but I look for things to disagree with on the smartest people, just so I know I'm not like a zombie doing everything and almost everything I agree with on Elon. But the free speech absolutist, I'm not jumping to the conclusion that I just, with the advent of social media, like free speech in a physical public square, okay, yeah, that's an absolutist. But when it comes to like social media free speech, I think it's important to be much more free speech than Twitter is now. Don't get me wrong. I think they should be much more free speech than they are now. But absolutist means like 100%. Maybe instead of being like 80% free speech like they are now, they should be like 99% free speech or something. I'm not sure. I'm not 100%. I'm just I'm still flickering with that in my head to figure it out, the cases for why you wouldn't want to be exactly 100% with mass hysteria capabilities on social media and such. But what do you think, Matt? What are your thoughts on Elon's point of view on this?
Yeah, I'm pretty firmly in Elon's camp, to be honest with you. And when he says a free speech absolutist, I don't think he's advocate, like, if you look at the U.S. Legal system and where it's kind of ended up on free speech, it's you can't yell fire in a crowded theater, you can't make threats of violence, and there are certain restrictions around like slander and libel for so you can't just like make up lies, like say Emmet did some absolutely horrible thing and then like he loses his job because of this like lie that somebody just made up. So like I think those.
But
sorts
to
of
me, that's what a free
protections.
speech absolution. That's what a free speech absolutist means, is you can do all that stuff potentially, because otherwise there's gray areas all over the place, is my opinion, and that's where those gray
Yeah, well,
areas get
so
shady and it's hard to enforce.
that's where the the U.S. legal system is kind of like wound up, is like those are like kind of the hard and fast rules, but you can say all sorts of like offensive, racist, sexist, misogynist, whatever things, and have kind of the ideas debate themselves.
The
My
only thing is,
concern.
I would say the legal system is not like a mathematical right or wrong. There's a person interpreting it, for the legal system. So I do think there's gray area with those things. I think free speech absolutes to me means like he does say you can shout fire or crowd a movie there. Like to me, that's what I'm thinking absolutist means. But maybe he is implying like those laws should stay in place and be carried forward to social media too.
Yeah, I mean, I think he hasn't commented on these types of issues specifically, but I think like if you were to ask Elon, do you think you should be able to threaten to kill somebody like on social media? I think he would probably say no. Like physical violence, like threats of physical violence, I think almost everybody would say is probably not a good idea, because
No, but again, I think I'm thinking absolutist means like anything, like even
that's
that, like as long as you're just saying it and you're not doing it, like, because then the thing is, I agree with you. And that's why I'm not totally in the absolute camp, but then there's gray areas. It's like, well, if I say your hair really upsets me and it makes me want to pull it out, is that threatening to kill you? I don't know. Like, where's the gray area, right? It's just too much interpretation for that. And then it gets to where
yeah.
Twitter is now.
Yeah, well, that's the problem, I think, is where Twitter is now. Like, I think they've gone way too far. I mean, all of big tech, to be honest with you, has gone much too far, in my opinion,
Yeah, I agree. Yeah.
on censoring, and I mean, it's all like from the left primarily. They see
Yeah.
the speech that is like on the far left seems to be like highly protected, and a lot of like conservatives have been kind of deplatformed, and like a lot of the people who've been deplatformed, like I strongly disagree with them on like their views or comments or whatever, But I think it's such a slippery slope, and I think it opens the door to authoritarianism, and then you're kind of marginalizing this one group of society that will feel marginalized, and I think marginalized people are kind of more prone to react in extremely aggressive ways. Yeah, I think trying to censor is almost always a bad idea. So I'm concerned about kind of the growth of authoritarianism and how so many people seem to not be concerned about kind of the growing censorship of big tech around free speech issues. To me, that's a really big issue, and I was surprised. Like I kind of got into a debate with some folks on Twitter about this, and I was just really surprised how people thought, well, no, like we're just trying to make sure people don't get offended. And I'm like, well, okay, you have to risk being offended if you're going to have a public conversation that has any kind of like legitimacy or truth in it. Like you and I, like we debate ideas back and forth, and sometimes realize like, oh shoot, I was wrong, and you know, I could be offended that you would like steamroll over me or think my ideas are bad. But I think the better thing to do is just, you know, have that truthful, thoughtful debate and risk, you know, being wrong and risk, you know, getting offended and risk offending someone else. Because I think that's going to be the best way to kind of grow and let the best ideas truly win out in the end. I don't know exactly where the right line is, but I do think we've gone way too far in terms of censorship.
We've gone way too far. It's a really good philosophical conversation. I love this stuff. Like, also, it starts with defining absolute. You know what a free speech absolutionist is that 100% of everything can be said, or is there some rules we have to place? And then you have a lot of other debates if it's the latter, because then it's like who interprets those rules, who sets those rules, you know, and those, then you have to have debates on that. Like, well, how does that person get to that position, or blah, blah, blah. So it's, to me, it almost seems simplest to make it black or white. Like either 100% of everything can be said and let the system, enforce itself with feedback loops to the people that say the worst things will be automatically ignored going forward. And those people will, their gene pool will not be carried forward most likely. or there's that argument too, I think. So there's a lot of philosophical ways you can discuss this, which I love. Another time. It's 10:35.
Yeah.
We better end this now.
We should. You know, one quick comment. Jack Dorsey said people should be able to pick kind of which algorithm they choose. And I do think that's a fair point, but I also think there's you can't deplatform people and then just say, oh, you can choose like whatever algorithm, but like you've got rid of all the like controversial people in like one subgroup.
Then you're serving them up, and you're serving up only a couple of algorithms to pick from, or the ingredients of the algorithm, and they're not really picking.
Exactly that. And then like Twitter has just been so awful on like managing.
It started bots. In my opinion, it started with the whole Trump banning of Twitter. Like, yeah, people might not like him. Maybe he's a nutcase. Maybe he's not. I don't know him personally. I mean, I think I'm not going to judge his character. He's a little out there with his Twitter persona. He's trying to get attention and he's trying to fire people up. Okay, but everyone on Twitter is pretty much like that. We had a democratic election and elected him for at least one term. Like give him his Twitter. I don't know. I thought that was really, horrid for, Twitter to take, our president of the United States off
a sitting president. Yeah. Like,
I'll just say, like, I'm not a huge
fan of Trump, to be honest with you. Like, I try not to get too political, but like he's a little bit, he does not have the level of decorum I would expect from a president. I'll just say that. But to deplatform him when he's sitting, like, to me, that was just like,
that was insane.
What?
Yeah. I think they re-energized his base doing that, to be honest.
I think so too.
They backfired on them. Yeah, I mean, he was the odds makers had him to win if he didn't play COVID so badly with, everything. So he was almost certainly going to win a second term, partly because of some of that, I bet too. But anyway, banning free speech is not a good idea. Banning speech is not a good idea in our view. And whether it's 100% absolutist or not, that's an interesting debate to have. And maybe another time we can get an interview with someone who's just expert on that stuff or something. Just go all in with them. That's really an interesting topic to me, because in the future, it's going to make a difference as we evolve more into like social media as our main communication.
Yeah, for sure. And then Trump launched that SPAC too, Digital World Acquisition Company. I haven't really followed what's going on with that, but it's like he made like billions of dollars on that thing.
I don't know what's going on with that.
So
Isn't it like Truth
I don't know
Social now? Isn't
either.
it called Truth Social? Isn't that what it's
Maybe
called?
it
Truth
is. I'm
Social?
not sure. I haven't
Yeah.
really been following it, but it's like you're going to see backlash like that, or whatever Elon's thinking about doing.
Mm-hmm.
It's just there's always going to be unintended consequences.
Yeah. I think you can't let the perfect be the enemy of the good, but the good can be so much better than it is right now with Twitter, So
Yeah.
they can it's good. It's a good service. Don't get me wrong. I'm happy. I'm grateful for Twitter as a communication tool. I've learned so much from it. Lots of people have learned so much, but they could do a lot better, is all we're saying. And anyway, we'll leave it at that. As the imposters of us on Twitter get away with staying imposters,
I
another
know,
thing
it's
with
so
Twitter.
ridiculous.
One imposter of mine has 35,000 followers too. They're all bots. If you look at them, that's crazy. How do you buy these? And some guy tweeted, I like retweet, how the scheme works. And surprised there's no like special forces in Twitter like shutting this stuff down.
Well, yeah,
If Twitter users exploiting it, what they're doing to us.
I know we're going on too long, but like I just have to say, like Twitter's technical handling of all this stuff has just been so atrocious. Like, yeah, I had somebody follow or impersonating me. I reported them, but then they changed their handle apparently. So they started
Yeah,
impersonating
you can change
somebody
your handle
else.
name. Yeah,
Yeah,
that's what they
and
do.
so
As soon
then
as
by
they're
the
caught, they
time
change someone else's handles. Yeah, that's what they do.
Well, by the time like Twitter had reviewed it, like they didn't take a snapshot of when their thing was all like my ID, my pictures, everything, which they should do. Like if you report somebody for impersonating, it should somehow come up with like a snapshot, or Twitter should be able to go back in time and see what did their page look like. But they just switched to impersonating someone else, and Twitter said, "Nope, sorry, they're not impersonating you. So we're going to let this account still be out there." It's just like, okay, well. That is atrocious technology for a 21st century tech company.
It's high time that someone gets in there and like puts their foot down on all these, and just makes things happen at Twitter to get this stuff resolved, because it should be resolvable. It's probably much more complicated than we realize, but it doesn't mean they shouldn't make it their top priority to resolve the trolls, not the trolls, but the impersonators especially. So anyway.
I did see Matt. Maybe ended on one hilarious comment Lex had on that tweet. He said something to the effect of like, Twitter only enforces free speech for bots. Like that seems to be so true. It's like the bots have
Lex
free reign on
Friedman,
Twitter.
somehow he has some, the people have these programs that automatically block people, and he blocked me on Twitter. I can't read his stuff on Twitter for like 3 or 4 weeks now, because I put a comment on one of his things. I was like, right after, like a week after, or a few days after Putin invaded, I was like, is it true there's rumors that you were going to interview Putin once? Is that ever going to happen, do you think? Just something like that, like curious, not trying to make fun of him or anything. And maybe it set off a keyword and some software is using to like block trolls, and I got blocked. But there was like, it was weird. So I guess when you got like 1 million plus followers, you need software to manage how to get rid of trolls and what. But I can't see anything he says anymore. Yeah,
probably. Well, he did say he kind of doubled down on interviewing Putin, which I was really surprised by. Yeah, on
I didn't see
Mark
that.
Zuckerberg interview he did. You can listen to that, and at the beginning he has this whole thing which is like, oh, I believe in like advancing love for him, all that stuff that he says. I want to like interview Putin and see who he is as a human being, and I'm just like,
I think it's good to get to know these, whatever you think, you got to talk. Communication is important, one way or another. So even who you think is the worst enemy, if they're causing so much damage, why not try to communicate and see what you can make of it? Probably wouldn't make things worse, right? It could maybe somehow possibly lead to something better. I don't know. Anyway, we went on a long time this week. Good chatting, Matt, as always. We will see everyone again here next week.
Yeah, we'll go over production and delivery. Should be fun. Thanks everyone for watching.
Yeah, and the model. Yeah, we'll go over the Matt's model and production. Yep. All right. See you guys.